Death's stench rode the wind across the ravine. Eliza Freeman stood frozen at the precipice, her dark eyes fixed on the horror below. A Comanche woman lay motionless in a widening pool of crimson, her vacant eyes reflecting the merciless Texas sky. Beside her, 3 tiny bundles squirmed and wailed newborns, still wet with birth, fighting for life in a world determined to erase their existence. Army boot prints circled the body like vultures around carrion, telling a story that turned Eliza's blood to ice. This wasn't battle's aftermath. This was calculated slaughter. Sweet Jesus. She whispered, her weathered hands trembling against her medicine bag. The year was 1875, and frontier law spoke with brutal clarity. Aiding Comanches meant death. But the midwife in her, the woman who had delivered life into a world that had taken so much from her, couldn't turn away from these infants. Not again. Not after everything. She scanned the horizon where drought-parched Texas stretched empty in all directions. Nobody would witness her choice. Nobody would know. A strange tingling sensation prickled at the back of her neck, like invisible fingers urging her forward. Eliza made her decision and scrambled down into the ravine toward 3 souls who refused to surrender to the brutality that had claimed their mother. "I'm here now," she murmured, gathering the triplets, 2 boys and a girl, into her shawl. Their tiny fists punched the air as if already battling a world determined to destroy them. As a black woman surviving alone on white settlements' edges, Eliza understood that fight in her bones. The dead mother's eyes seemed to track her movements, pleading from beyond death. Around the woman's neck hung a broken turquoise necklace, half torn away by greedy hands. As Eliza carefully removed what remained, the stone pulsed with unexpected warmth against her palm. She nearly dropped it, heart stuttering, as the turquoise flickered with blue light before returning to normal. Had she imagined it? "I'll tell them about you," she promised, tucking the necklace into her pocket where it continued to radiate unnatural warmth. "I swear it on everything I hold dear." An eagle's cries pierced the silence as Eliza Freeman, widow of Buffalo soldier Eliza Freeman, climbed back up the ravine with 3 Comanche infants pressed against her heart. Something whispered that her decision had set wheels turning that could never be reversed, a destiny now locked in motion that would forever bind their fates together. 7 years earlier, Eliza had arrived in Copper Valley, clutching only her husband's folded Union flag, her midwife skills and dreams of beginning anew. Isaiah, a proud Buffalo soldier, had secured land through his military service. "We'll build something that matters here," he'd promised before riding out with his regiment. 3 months later, his captain returned with Isaiah's effects and hollow condolences. "Ambushed by Comanches," the captain had muttered, eyes fixed on his boots. "Nothing to be done." Even then, Eliza hadn't believed it. Something in the captain's manner, the way his fingers twitched nervously against his holster, how he refused to meet her gaze, had planted doubt's seed. But with no family, no money, and nowhere to return to, she'd buried her suspicions alongside her hopes and dug her roots into Texas earth. Now, 7 years later, she rode toward home. 3 newborns hidden in her medicine cart beneath herb packets and bandages. The drought-ravaged landscape seemed to watch her pass, conspiring to protect her secret. Her isolated homestead appeared on the horizon, a sturdy cabin, a struggling garden, and the beginnings of an orchard that Isaiah had only imagined. No neighbors for miles. Perfect for hiding 3 children who would be slaughtered if discovered. Inside, Eliza prepared goat's milk with healing herbs, coaxing the infants to drink from rags dipped in the mixture. Their cries weakened as the hours passed, and Eliza found herself praying for the first time since folding Isaiah's flag. "You're survivors," she whispered as night fell. "Just like me." She placed the turquoise necklace on the mantel, startling when it gleamed momentarily blue in the firelight, before fading. Exhaustion, she told herself, nothing more. By morning, she had named them after the stars that had guided her through her darkest nights, Rigel and Sirius, for the boys Vega, for the girl. The broken turquoise necklace hung above the fireplace, a promise to a mother who would never see her children grow. Eliza understood the risks with devastating clarity. A black woman raising Comanche children in Texas during the Indian Wars was a death sentence awaiting execution. But something more powerful than fear drove her, perhaps the same inexplicable force that had drawn her to that blood-soaked ravine. "Your mother wanted you to live," she told the sleeping infants, "and I'll be damned if I fail her." The three children grew like desert flowers after rare rain, resilient, vibrant, and impossibly connected. By their 5th birthday, the bond between them had become something Eliza couldn't explain to herself, let alone others. They moved as one communicated without words and sensed dangers before they manifested. "They ain't natural." Widow Haynes, one of the few who traded with Eliza for her medicines, had muttered when the triplets played in the yard. "Three faces, same as the next, moving like one soul split 3 ways." Eliza had shrugged. All children are gifts. But the widow had crossed herself before hurrying away, and Eliza recognized that whispers would only grow louder as the children did. She taught them everything she knew, which plants healed, which killed, how to read from her precious Bible and medical texts, how to vanish when strangers approached. About their Comanche heritage she could teach nothing except pride, but they seemed to possess knowledge she hadn't imparted: how to move without sound through brush, how to call birds from trees, how to interpret wind's warnings. When they reached 7, Rigel, with his analytical eyes always assessing, asked the question she dreaded. "Why don't we look like you, Mother Eliza?" They sat around the fireplace, the turquoise necklace catching light above them. For an instant, Eliza thought she saw the stone pulse in rhythm with the children's heartbeats. Eliza took a steadying breath and told them partial truth. They were Comanche children. She had found them. Their mother had died. She omitted the boot prints, the obvious violence, and the constant danger surrounding them. Some truths could wait. "Are we bad Indians?" Sirius asked, his expressive face crumpling with emotion. Even at 7, he'd absorbed the settlers' venomous talk about the Comanche. "You're children," Eliza replied firmly, "and you're mine. Nothing about that is bad." Vega, fearless, where her brothers hesitated, reached toward the necklace above the mantel. This was hers, wasn't it? Our first mother's. Without waiting for confirmation, she continued. "Sometimes I dream about her. She's always trying to tell me something important, but I can't quite hear the words." Eliza felt cold spread through her chest. She'd never told them where the necklace came from. Beyond their hidden valley, tensions mounted. Drought had stretched into its 5th year, driving settlers and native tribes alike to desperation over dwindling resources. Comanche raids increased along the frontier, with retribution swift and merciless. New settlers pushed deeper into contested territories, and among them came a man whose arrival would change everything, Reverend Ezekiel Wade. "The Lord has called me to shepherd this flock through tribulation." Wade's voice thundered across the makeshift church in the growing settlement of Copper Creek, 10 miles from Eliza's homestead. Eliza sat in the back row, a shawl concealing her face. She rarely ventured into town, and never with the children, but supplies had run dangerously low, and troubling rumors demanded investigation. Beside her sat Widow Haynes, nervously fingering her worn Bible. "Author. This drought is God's punishment for our tolerance of savagery." Wade continued, his tall frame commanding attention, eyes burning with zealotry. "The Comanche devils must be driven out or exterminated, and any who aid them share in their sins." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the congregation. Fear and suffering made people receptive to such poison, Eliza knew. The settlement had doubled in size over the past year, new arrivals lured by rumors of copper in the surrounding hills, rumors started not coincidentally by Wade himself. "There's talk of a treaty." Widow Haynes whispered. Army's bringing a commission to negotiate with the remaining Comanche bands. Wade's fighting it with everything he has. Eliza nodded slightly, watching Wade work the crowd into righteous fury. She'd encountered men like him before, wolves in shepherd's clothing using God to justify greed and hatred. But something about his particular venom toward the Comanche seemed personal, calculated. After the service, she gathered her supplies quickly, eager to return home. As she loaded her wagon, a shadow fell across her path. Miss Freeman, isn't it? Reverend Wade's voice was honey poured over broken glass. Our esteemed healer. I don't believe we've formally met. Eliza straightened her spine. At 42, she'd faced too many threats to cower now. Reverend, your sermon was passionate. His smile never reached his eyes. God's work requires passion. I understand you live quite alone out near Comanche territory. A dangerous choice for a woman without protection. I manage just fine. I've heard curious tales about your household. His eyes narrowed slightly. Children who don't belong to you. Children who aren't like us. Ice slid down Eliza's spine, but her expression revealed nothing. People do love their gossip, Reverend. If you'll excuse me, daylight's wasting. As she climbed onto her wagon, Wade's hand shot out, gripping her arm with surprising strength. This land is destined for God-fearing Americans, Miss Freeman. Anyone standing in progress's path, anyone harboring civilization's enemies, will find themselves swept aside. The Lord's winds of change are blowing. Eliza pulled her arm free. I'll pray for fair weather then. As she drove away, Wade's voice carried on the wind. The Lord sees what happens in darkness, Miss Freeman. All secrets come to light. The 10-mile journey home had never felt so endless. When she finally saw her cabin, 3 identical faces peered anxiously from the window, and Eliza knew their peaceful years had ended. Later that night, as the triplets slept in their shared room, Eliza removed the floorboard beneath her bed and pulled out a wooden box. Inside lay Isaiah's Union Army revolver, still loaded, and a sealed letter she'd never found courage to open. It had arrived 3 years after Isaiah's death, delivered by a trembling young soldier who disappeared before she could question him. The seal broke easily after all this time. The hurried, desperate handwriting inside made her hands shake. Mrs. Freeman, I can no longer bear the weight of lies. Your husband did not die by Comanche hands. There was a massacre, women, children. Some wanted copper rights, some just wanted blood. Isaiah tried to stop it. What they did to him after was worse than death. A mother survived long enough to birth 3 babies. I don't know if they lived. God forgive us. A friend. The letter trembled in Eliza's hands. She'd suspected, but knowing twisted the knife deeper. A massacre. Copper rights. The timing, the location, it couldn't be coincidence. The triplets' mother had been killed in the same massacre that claimed Isaiah. And now Reverend Wade spouted rhetoric against treaties while prospecting for copper. You knew. The voice from the doorway made her jump. Vega stood there, her eyes gleaming in the darkness, her brother's silent shadows behind her. You always knew how our mother died. Eliza's heart hammered against her ribs. How long have you been listening? We weren't listening, Rigel said softly, his logical mind already calculating implications. We just knew. The same way we know when coyotes are near or when rain is coming. Sirius stepped forward, his expressive face twisted with shared pain. The man at the church today, he was there. When our mother died. When your husband died. Eliza stared at them, stunned. The children had never been to town, had never laid eyes on Wade. How could you possibly? We see things sometimes, Vega explained, touching her temple. When we sleep, when we touch certain things. Like a broken turquoise necklace, Eliza thought with sudden clarity. We need to leave, she decided, rising to her feet. Pack only what you can carry. We'll head south before dawn. But even as she spoke, a distant sound reached them. Hoofbeats, multiple riders approaching in the dark. The triplets froze, each tilting their head in a slightly different direction, but all listening to something beyond human hearing. Too late. Rigel whispered, his young face grim with calculation. 12 riders, armed, moving fast from the west. They'll surround the house in minutes. Vega added, her voice steady despite the danger. Sirius clutched Eliza's hand, his eyes wide with fear. I'm scared, Mother. Eliza squeezed back. So am I. But we're not done fighting yet. Eliza extinguished every lamp in the cabin, hustled the children into the root cellar beneath the kitchen, and covered the trap door with a rug and table. Through cracks in the floorboards above, moonlight filtered down as riders surrounded the homestead. Search the place. Wade's voice, stripped of its Sunday politeness, cracked like a whip. Find those heathen spawn and the nigger woman harboring them. Eliza clutched Isaiah's revolver. The children pressed against her in the cramped space. Footsteps thundered overhead. Furniture crashed, glass shattered. The triplets remained utterly silent, not even a breath loud enough to detect. They'd been preparing for this moment their entire lives. Nothing, Reverend, a man reported above. Place is empty. They can't have gone far. Wade snarled. Burn it, all of it. We'll smoke them out if they're hiding in the hills. Coal oil's sharp smell preceded the first flames. Within minutes, the cabin groaned and crackled as fire consumed it from above. Smoke began seeping through the floorboards, thickening with each passing moment. Not this way. Vega whispered, crawling toward a narrow tunnel at the cellar's back, an escape route Eliza had dug years ago, but hoped never to need. It's collapsed. Sirius coughed as they reached it. Something's blocking the exit. Panic clutched at Eliza's throat as smoke intensified, making each breath a struggle. They were trapped beneath a burning house, with armed men waiting outside. Death felt suddenly terribly close. The necklace. Rigel said suddenly, his analytical mind making connections the others hadn't. Mother, where's the turquoise? Upstairs. Eliza managed between coughs. Above the fireplace. We need it. Vega insisted with unexpected urgency. It can help us. It's too late, Eliza argued. The fire. But Sirius was already pushing at the trap door, his small body straining against the weight. Help me. Together, they lifted the heavy door. Flames licked across the kitchen floor, and heat blasted them like an open furnace. Thick smoke billowed down into their hiding place. Stay here, Eliza commanded, but Sirius scrambled up before she could stop him, keeping low beneath the worst smoke. Sirius, no. Eliza lunged after him, but the boy had already disappeared into the inferno. Through the smoke, she glimpsed him crawling across the burning floor toward the fireplace, where the turquoise necklace still hung. Her heart stopped as a burning beam crashed down just inches from him, showering his back with sparks. He cried out, but kept moving. He'll die in there. Eliza whispered, terror clawing at her throat. Wait, Rigel urged, gripping her arm with surprising strength. The stone wants him. Outside, men shouted. Someone had spotted movement through the windows. A gunshot splintered what remained of the glass, the bullet embedding itself in a wall inches from Sirius's head. Eliza couldn't wait any longer. She hauled herself up into the burning cabin, choking immediately as toxic smoke filled her lungs. The heat was unbearable, blistering her skin as she crawled toward Sirius. Just as she reached the middle of the room, a section of the burning ceiling collapsed between her and Sirius, blocking her path with a wall of flames. Through the fire, she could see him reaching for the necklace, his small fingers just inches away. Sirius, she screamed, desperate to reach him. Another gunshot. Wade's men were firing blindly into the house now. Eliza flattened herself against the floor as bullets splintered the burning wood around her. From below, Vega and Rigel called out for their brother. Eliza searched frantically for a way around the flames. There was none. Then she saw it. The turquoise necklace had begun to glow with brilliant blue light that somehow penetrated the smoke and flames. Sirius grabbed it just as the wall behind him started to collapse. "Run!" Eliza shouted, but another section of ceiling crashed down, separating them completely. Through the flames, she saw Sirius clutching the necklace to his chest as fire surrounded him. There was no escape route left. Her heart shattered. She had failed him. Mother Eliza. Vega cried from below. "The stone is calling, come back." Choking, burning. Eliza retreated toward the trapdoor. How could she face the others without Sirius? How could she live with this failure? As she reached the opening, a blinding flash of blue light exploded from the other side of the burning room. The flames between her and Sirius parted like curtains. And through this impossible path stumbled the boy, the turquoise necklace blazing in his hand, like a star fallen to earth. His clothes smoldered, his face was blackened with soot, but he was alive. Eliza grabbed him, pulling him toward the cellar opening as bullets continued to slam into the cabin's exterior. They tumbled down together into the relative safety below, where Vega and Rigel immediately embraced their brother. "But why?" Eliza demanded between choking coughs. "Why risk your life for that?" Sirius pressed the necklace into her hands. The stone was still glowing a pulsating blue that matched their accelerated heartbeats. It felt alive, aware. "We need to go." Rigel urged, his practical nature asserting itself. "The whole structure will collapse soon." The smoke in the cellar had thickened to the point where they could barely see each other. Eliza tore strips from her petticoat, soaked them in their dwindling water supply, and wrapped them around the children's faces. The tunnel remained their only hope, blocked or not. "We dig," she said simply, "together." With bleeding hands and fading strength, they clawed at the collapsed tunnel. Overhead, the destruction continued, their home of 7 years reduced to ash and rubble. Wade's men had formed a perimeter outside, waiting for fire to flush them out or kill them. Just as Eliza's muscles began to fail, her fingers broke through to open air. Cool night breeze rushed in, sweet as salvation. "Keep digging," she urged the children, her voice barely audible through the wet cloth. When the hole was large enough, she pushed Rigel through first. "Run for the creek bed. Hide in the reeds. I'll bring your siblings." The small boy hesitated, torn between self-preservation and loyalty. "I won't leave you. You must," Eliza insisted. "We'll be right behind you." After Rigel disappeared, she helped Vega through next. Sirius was last, his movements hindered by burns and smoke exposure. Eliza could hear Wade ordering his men to encircle the property, sensing their quarry might be escaping. "Go," she whispered to Sirius, helping him into the tunnel. "I'll follow directly." She waited until he had crawled far enough ahead and then turned back to retrieve Isaiah's revolver, which had fallen during their escape. As she reached for it, her gaze fell on the turquoise necklace lying forgotten in the chaos. The stone flared brilliant blue as she touched it, momentarily illuminating the smoke-filled space. Within that light, Eliza glimpsed not one, but 2 figures, a Comanche woman she recognized from the ravine, and beside her, impossibly, Isaiah. They watched her with expressions combining sorrow and gratitude before vanishing like smoke. Heart-racing, Eliza seized the necklace and squeezed into the narrow tunnel, the sounds of the burning cabin and Wade's angry shouts fading behind her. She emerged into the night air 100 yards from the burning homestead. Wade's men scattered across the property, searching for any sign of survivors. The triplets waited in the shadow of an ancient oak, huddled together, Sirius trembling with pain and exhaustion between his siblings. "The hills," Eliza whispered, gathering them close. "We need to reach the caves before dawn." As they prepared to move, a shadow detached itself from the darkness nearby. Eliza raised Isaiah's revolver, finger tightening on the trigger. "Don't shoot," a low voice cautioned. The man stepped forward, hands raised. He wore army uniform but kept to the shadows, clearly avoiding detection by Wade's men. "I'm Captain James Hollister. I've been looking for you." Eliza recognized the name instantly. The letter about Isaiah had been signed, "A Friend." "Why should I trust you?" she demanded, keeping the gun steady despite her exhaustion. "Because I wrote you the truth about your husband," he replied. "And because in about 10 minutes, Wade's men will find your tunnel. You need someone who knows where they'll search next." Eliza studied him through narrowed eyes. Something in his manner, a certain tension around his mouth, the way he avoided looking directly at the children raised her suspicions. But they had no options left. "He's hiding something," Vega whispered, her young voice certain. "But not about helping us now." Eliza hesitated only a moment longer. "Lead the way, Captain. But know that I won't hesitate to put a bullet in you if this is a trap." Hollister nodded grimly. "I'd expect nothing less." Captain Hollister guided them through gullies and dry creek beds, avoiding the open paths where Wade's men searched. Sirius's burns and smoke inhalation slowed their progress. But the captain showed unexpected knowledge of native plants, creating a soothing poultice that seemed to ease the boy's pain. "Why are you helping us?" Eliza finally asked when they stopped in a sheltered canyon to rest. Hollister's face looked haunted in the pre-dawn light. "Because I should have helped 7 years ago." He paused, his hands working methodically on Sirius's bandages, avoiding Eliza's eyes. "I was there, Mrs. Freeman, at the massacre. You watched them murder innocent women and children." Her hand moved back to the revolver. "I didn't just watch." He admitted the confession, seeming to physically pain him. "I was one of them. Under orders, but that's no excuse." He finally met her gaze, his eyes hollow with self-loathing. "Your husband tried to stop us. Wade had promised us just a show of force to scare the Comanche band off copper-rich land. But when we arrived, he ordered a full slaughter. And you obeyed." Eliza said, her voice deadly quiet. The triplets had gone completely still, listening with identical expressions of contained rage. "I did." Hollister acknowledged shame, evident in every line of his body. "Until your husband broke ranks and tried to protect a pregnant Comanche woman. The triplets' mother." He glanced at the children. "Isaiah knew they would kill him, but he stood between her and our guns anyway. Said we'd have to shoot through him. So they did." Rigel stated flatly, his analytical mind reconstructing the scene with terrible clarity. Hollister nodded miserably. "Wade shot him personally, but the distraction gave the woman time to flee toward the ravine. Wade sent men after her." His voice faltered. "You've been following us," Vega accused suddenly. "Not just now, for years." Hollister looked startled at her perception. "Not consistently. I deserted after the massacre. Couldn't face what I'd been part of. But I've watched Wade's rise to power from the shadows, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment to expose him." "Why now?" Eliza demanded. "Because the Treaty Commission arrives tomorrow. Because Wade and his cousin Senator Caldwell Wade are planning something big, something that will secure the entire valley's copper rights for their private mining interests. And because—" He stopped abruptly, glancing at the children with something like superstitious fear. "Because of us," Sirius said softly, his empathic nature sensing what remained unspoken. "You've heard stories about us, about what we can do." Before Hollister could respond, a twig snapped nearby. They froze, listening. Dogs barked in the distance, hunting hounds following their scent. "But we need to move," Hollister urged. "They're tracking us." They hurried deeper into the canyon. But as dawn approached, mounted figures appeared ahead, blocking their path. More riders closed in from behind. They were surrounded. "Well, well," a familiar voice called. "The deserter returns, and with such interesting company." Sergeant Jenkins, a barrel-chested man with cold eyes, led the group ahead. 5 riders, all heavily armed, all wearing expressions that promised violence. Behind them, more of Wade's men approached with dogs straining at their leashes. Captain Hollister. Jenkins continued enjoying the moment. Reverend Wade will be right pleased we found you. Been looking a long while. These are innocent civilians, Sergeant. Hollister replied, placing himself between the riders and Eliza and the children. Let them pass. Civilians. Jenkins laughed harshly. A runaway nigger woman and 3 Comanche whelps the bounty on them will keep my men drinking for months. His eyes narrowed. As for you, Captain, desertion is a hanging offense. No one's hanging anyone today. Hollister stated, hand moving to his sidearm. I wouldn't, Captain, Jenkins warned. 10 rifles against your pistol. Bad odds. 11 against 10. Eliza corrected, stepping up beside Hollister with Isaiah's revolver drawn. Jenkins laughed again. You think you can shoot all of us before we cut you down? And even if by some miracle you manage it, what then? Wade has 20 more men combing these hills. He was right. They were hopelessly outnumbered. Sirius could barely stand, and there was nowhere left to run. Put down the guns, Jenkins ordered. Come quietly, and maybe Wade will let the woman live. The Indian brats are coming with us either way. Eliza's finger tightened on the trigger. She'd die before letting them take her children. As the situation balanced on a knife edge, a lone rider appeared on the ridge above a mounted warrior silhouetted against the lightening sky. His hair hung in 2 long braids, his face painted for battle. Across his shoulder, a fresh wound glistened in the growing light. Jenkins spotted him too. Well now, a real live Comanche. This day just keeps getting better. But the warrior made no move to flee or attack. He simply sat his horse watching the confrontation below with unnerving stillness. The triplets had gone rigid, their eyes fixed on the newcomer. The turquoise necklace, which Eliza had tucked into her pocket, began to glow through the fabric, pulsing with blue light that matched the thundering of their hearts. Mother, Vega whispered, her voice strange. The necklace. Understanding what she needed, Eliza slowly withdrew the turquoise pendant. As it emerged into the open air, its glow intensified until it cast eerie blue shadows across the canyon walls. What the hell? Jenkins growled, his horse shifting nervously beneath him. The mounted warrior chose that moment to urge his horse down the steep slope toward them, moving with the fluid grace of someone born to the saddle. Jenkins's men raised their rifles but seemed hesitant to fire, unsettled by the glowing stone and the warrior's fearless advance. Shoot him, Jenkins ordered, raising his own weapon. Before anyone could fire, Sirius, despite his injuries, stepped forward, raising his hand toward the approaching rider. No, he said, his voice stronger than seemed possible given his condition. He is blood. The boy's delirious. Jenkins snorted. Take aim. But something extraordinary happened as the rifles leveled. The turquoise necklace in Eliza's hand flared with blinding intensity. Within that light, spectral figures took shape, dozens of them, Comanche men, women, and children, their forms translucent but unmistakable. They circled the living people, their expressions fierce and protective. The horses panicked, bucking and rearing in terror. Several of Jenkins's men were thrown, their rifles discharging harmlessly into the air. Others fled outright, convinced they faced supernatural retribution. Through this chaos rode the Comanche warrior straight toward the triplets. As he neared, the resemblance became undeniable, the same high cheekbones, the same determined set of jaw. He was older, weathered by years of hardship, but his features were mirrored perfectly in the children's faces. I am called Broken Shield, he announced in accented English, ignoring the pandemonium around them. And I have been searching for 3 stars who vanished from the sky 7 summers ago. Jenkins, one of the few who had maintained control of his horse, fired at the warrior. The bullet grazed Broken Shield's arm, drawing fresh blood, but he didn't flinch. Run! Hollister shouted to Eliza, and the children drawing his pistol and returning fire at Jenkins. In the ensuing gunfight, Eliza grabbed Sirius, while Broken's shield swept up Rigel and Vega onto his horse. Together, they fled into a narrow side canyon as Hollister provided covering fire. Behind them, more of Wade's men had regrouped and were giving chase. This way. Hollister called, having caught up to them. He led them toward what appeared to be a solid rock wall. There's a hidden cave entrance. The narrow opening was barely visible, concealed behind scrub brush. They squeezed inside just as bullets ricocheted off the canyon walls around them. The cave extended deeper than expected, opening into a larger chamber, where they could finally catch their breath. Eliza immediately checked Sirius's condition, relieved to find his breathing had improved despite their desperate flight. Broken's shield knelt before all three children, studying their faces with wonder and grief intermingled. My sons, he said softly, touching Rigel and Sirius's cheeks. My daughter. He turned to Vega, who met his gaze without fear. Your mother was strong water daughter of Chief Many Horses. She was carrying you when the blue coats came. We know, Vega said simply. The stone shows us things. Hollister had positioned himself at the cave entrance, rifle ready. They're searching the canyon, he reported. It won't take them long to find this place. The white preacher hunts you relentlessly, Broken's shield observed. What does he fear from children? Not just the children. Hollister answered, his eyes never leaving the canyon outside. Mrs. Freeman has evidence that could destroy Wade and his cousin's plans for the copper beneath these hills. Eliza studied Hollister with renewed suspicion. How do you know what evidence I have? A telling pause. I assumed. The letter I sent. The letter mentioned nothing about evidence, she challenged. Only Isaiah's death and the massacre. Cornered Hollister's shoulders sagged. Because I've been watching you far longer than I admitted. Even before I wrote that letter. I needed to know if you had anything that could bring Wade down. You've been using us as bait. Rigel concluded, his logical mind connecting the dots. Drawing Wade out so you could gather evidence against him. Hollister couldn't meet their eyes. At first, yes. But then I saw how you raised these children, Mrs. Freeman. How you created something beautiful from such tragedy. I couldn't let Wade destroy that regardless of my larger plans. And what exactly are those larger plans, Captain? Eliza demanded. Before he could answer, Sirius gasped, sitting upright despite his injuries. Someone's coming, not Wade's men. A friend. Seconds later, they heard someone approaching the cave entrance, not with the heavy boots of Wade's hunters, but with the careful steps of someone who knew how to move, silently. Eliza. A woman's voice called softly. Captain Hollister. Widow Haynes, Eliza exclaimed with relief as the older woman slipped into the cave. The widow wasn't alone. Behind her came the town doctor and several other settlers, people Eliza recognized as having kept their distance from Reverend Wade's inflammatory rhetoric. The Lord works in mysterious ways, the widow said, embracing Eliza. Last night, I dreamed of 3 children surrounded by blue light. When I woke, I knew I had to gather these good people and find you. The doctor moved immediately to examine Sirius, cleaning and properly bandaging his burns. This boy needs rest and care, but he'll heal. He's remarkably strong. As the doctor worked, Widow Haynes explained that not everyone in Copper Creek had fallen under Wade's influence. A small resistance had formed, people who remembered Eliza's healing skills and kindness, who questioned Wade's sudden wealth and violent methods. We've been watching, waiting for a moment to act, she said. When Wade gathered his men for this hunt, we knew the time had come. You risked everything, Eliza said, moved by their courage. As did you when you saved these children. The widow replied simply. Hollister cleared his throat. The Treaty Commission arrives today. If we can reach them with evidence of Wade's crimes, what evidence? Broken Shield interrupted, his dark eyes fixed on the captain with lingering distrust. Words from a deserter, the testimony of a black woman and Comanche children. The white man's law does not favor such witnesses. He's right, Eliza agreed. We need something more concrete. Hollister hesitated, then reached into his jacket and withdrew a folded document. This map shows where Wade ordered massacres over the past decade. Every location corresponds exactly with the richest copper deposits in the territory. Rigel studied the map with his analytical eye. This proves correlation, not causation. We need more. There's more, Hollister admitted reluctantly. In Wade's church office, detailed records of every operation he coordinated with corrupt military officers. Names, dates, payments. I've seen them, but couldn't risk stealing them before I found you all. Why? Vega demanded, her perceptive gaze piercing through his evasions. What aren't you telling us? Hollister closed his eyes briefly, as if gathering courage. Because my name is in those records too. I didn't just participate in one massacre, I helped plan several before your mother's. Before I changed, a tense silence filled the cave. Broken Shield's hand moved to his knife, but Eliza placed a restraining hand on his arm. What changed you? She asked quietly. Eliza Freeman. Hollister answered, his voice barely audible. The way he stood there, one man against all of us, ready to die for what was right. I'd never seen courage like that. After we killed him, I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. His eyes haunted me, not accusing, just disappointed. Like he'd expected better from me. The turquoise necklace began to pulse with soft blue light as he spoke, as if responding to Isaiah's name. Sirius, despite his weakened state, noticed first. The stone recognizes the truth, he said softly. Isaiah's spirit is connected to it somehow. That's impossible, Hollister objected. It's a Comanche artifact. It's more than that, Vega explained, reaching for the necklace. As she touched it, the blue glow intensified. It contains memories. Not just our mothers, but others who died protecting someone they loved. Like Isaiah died protecting our mother, Rigel added thoughtfully. Eliza felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cave's coolness. What are you saying? The stone chose us all. Sirius said, his empathic nature sensing connections the others missed. It brought us together. You, Mother Eliza. Our father. He nodded toward Broken Shield. Even Captain Hollister. For what purpose? Broken Shield questioned. To stop what's coming. Vega answered with unsettling certainty. Wade and his cousin planned something worse than individual massacres. They want the entire territory cleared of Comanche, a final solution. The adults exchanged alarmed glances, but before they could question further, the widow interrupted. Whatever spiritual mysteries are at work, we face practical problems now. Wade's men have surrounded these hills. The Treaty Commission arrives by train at noon. We need those documents from the church. Hollister nodded grimly. I can get them. I know where Wade keeps them. Alone? Eliza asked skeptically. After you just confessed to being Wade's former accomplice? I owe this debt, Hollister insisted. Let me pay it. No. Rigel countered, his logical mind already calculating alternatives. We need a better plan. One that guarantees the evidence reaches the Treaty Commission, even if some of us are captured or killed. The boys' grim practicality silenced the cave. For a moment, they all confronted the very real possibility that not everyone would survive the coming hours. Broken Shield spoke first. My son thinks like a war chief already. pride tempered with sorrow colored his voice. "What do you propose?" Rigel outlined his strategy quickly. They would split into 3 groups. Hollister and the doctor would create a diversion near the church, drawing Wade's attention. Eliza Broken Shield and the Triplets would enter the church through a rarely used side entrance. Widow Haynes knew about retrieving the evidence. Meanwhile, the widow and the remaining settlers would secure a path to the train station where the commission would arrive. "What about Wade's cousin?" Eliza questioned. "Senator Wade will have his own security at the station." "Well, that's where we'll need the stone," Vega said, touching the turquoise necklace. "It's been gathering strength since we reunited with our father. It can reveal truth in ways papers alone cannot." Thunder rumbled in the distance, though the sky had been clear earlier. A storm was building, as if nature itself aligned with the coming confrontation. "We move at midday," Rigel concluded. "When the Treaty Commission arrives, and Wade will be distracted greeting them." "The children stay hidden," Eliza insisted. "It's too dangerous." 3 identical expressions of stubborn determination met her concern. "We are part of this," Sirius said gently. "We always have been." "The stone needs us together," Vega added. "And logically, we stand a better chance united than divided," Rigel finished. Eliza looked to Broken Shield for support, but found only understanding resignation in his eyes. "They are not ordinary children." He repeated his earlier observation. They never were. Copper Creek's main street shimmered under the midday sun, though dark thunderclouds gathered on the horizon. The town bustled with unusual activity as residents prepared for the Treaty Commission's arrival. Territorial officials, army officers, and curious onlookers congregated near the train station where a platform had been erected for formal speeches. Reverend Wade stood prominently at the center of it all, his clerical collar and pious expression masking the fury that had driven him through the night. The failure to capture Eliza Freeman and the Comanche children had cost him dearly. Several men injured others, speaking fearfully of supernatural events, and no prisoners to show for it. Only the imminent arrival of his cousin Senator Caldwell Wade prevented him from continuing the hunt personally. "Any sign of them?" he asked a nervous deputy who approached. "Nothing, Reverend. We've got men watching every road into town." Wade's damaged hand, still crudely bandaged from the cabin confrontation, throbbed with pain that matched his anger. "They're coming. They have to come. Double the guard at the church and my office." Across town, hidden in the shadow of the livery stable, Hollister checked his pocket watch. "Almost time. The train's due in 15 minutes. Beside him, the doctor shifted uncomfortably, unused to the weight of the revolver Hollister had insisted he carry. "I'm a healer, not a fighter, Captain." "Today you're both," Hollister replied grimly, "just like the rest of us." Their task was simple but dangerous: create enough commotion near the saloon to draw guards away from the church. Whether they'd survive to meet the others afterward remained an open question. Meanwhile, Eliza Broken Shield and the Triplets crouched behind the church's small cemetery, watching the back entrance where 2 armed men stood guard. Despite his injuries, Sirius had insisted on coming the turquoise necklace now hanging around his neck, where it pulsed with subtle blue energy. "Remember," Eliza whispered to the children, "if anything goes wrong, you run. Your father will get you safely away." "Nothing will go wrong," Vega stated with unnerving confidence. "The stone has shown me." Broken Shield studied his daughter with a mixture of pride and concern. In the brief time since finding his children, he'd witnessed abilities that exceeded even his people's oldest legends of spirit-touched ones. "And the thunder will be our signal," Rigel reminded them, glancing at the approaching storm clouds. Across town at the station, an elaborate welcoming committee had assembled. Reverend Wade stood prominently beside the mayor and other town officials, all awaiting the train, now visible in the distance, trailing black smoke against the darkening sky. What they didn't see was Widow Haynes and several trusted farmers, positioned strategically along the route from church to station, ready to ensure safe passage for the evidence that could change the territory's future. The train whistle pierced the air just as the first thunderclap boomed overhead. Right on cue, shouting erupted from the direction of the saloon, followed by gunshots. Wade's head snapped toward the disturbance. "Jenkins," he called to his sergeant. "Take 4 men and see what that's about." As the guards hurried away, Eliza watched the church entrance. Sure enough, one of the remaining guards moved toward the commotion, leaving only a single man at the door. "Now," Broken Shield whispered, notching an arrow to his bow. The arrow flew with deadly accuracy, striking the guard's leg. As he fell clutching his wound and shouting for help, Widow Haynes emerged from behind the church woodpile, moving with surprising speed for her age. She reached the injured guard and brought the heavy end of her walking stick down on his head, silencing him. "Quickly," she hissed toward the cemetery. They sprinted across the open ground, Broken Shield carrying Sirius, despite the boy's protests. Inside the church stood empty, most parishioners having gone to witness the commission's arrival. The side door to Wade's office was locked, but Eliza made quick work of it with the thin metal tools she'd once used for delicate surgical procedures. The office was meticulously organized, ledgers and maps arranged with military precision. Rigel moved immediately to the large oak cabinet Wade had always kept locked. "There," he said confidently, "behind the false panel." "How could you possibly know that?" Eliza asked as Broken Shield broke the cabinet lock with his hunting knife. "The stone shows me," Rigel replied matter-of-factly. "It remembers when Wade hid things here." Sure enough, when they removed the cabinet's back panel, a hidden compartment contained stacks of documents, detailed records of operations conducted against Comanche bands, complete with maps showing copper deposits, military orders, and payment records. "These prove everything," Eliza breathed, scanning the damning evidence. "The massacres, the copper claims, the military corruption. And this," Broken Shield said grimly, holding up a document bearing official seals, "is a territory-wide removal order already signed by territorial officials. It only awaits the governor's approval after today's treaty negotiations." "It's a trap." Rigel realized, his analytical mind quickly processing implications. "The Treaty Commission isn't here to negotiate. They're here to announce the final removal of all Comanche from the territory." Thunder crashed directly overhead as they absorbed this revelation. Rain began lashing against the windows, the storm arriving with unexpected ferocity. "We need to reach the commission before Wade's cousin addresses them," Eliza decided, gathering the most damning documents. Just as they turned to leave, the main church door banged open. Reverend Wade stood silhouetted in the doorway, rainwater streaming from his hat brim, his damaged hand clutching a revolver. "I knew you'd come," he said, satisfaction hardening his features. Thieves always returned to the scene of their crimes. Behind him entered 4 armed men, not his usual followers, but professionals with the hard eyes of men who killed for pay. Senator Wade's personal security. The Reverend explained, noting their surprised expressions. He arrived early on a private car. The commission's train has been delayed by the storm. Convenient, isn't it? Eliza pushed the children behind her, acutely aware they were trapped. The back entrance would be guarded, too. Wade was too thorough for elementary mistakes. "It's over, Ezekiel," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "We have the evidence of everything you've done. The massacres, the land theft, Eliza Freeman's murder." Something flashed in Wade's eyes, not fear, but annoyance, as if she were an insect he'd failed to swat properly the first time. "Evidence requires someone alive to present it." He gestured to his men. "Secure the Indian brats. Erase the others." As the armed men advanced, Sirius stepped forward despite his injuries, the turquoise necklace glowing visibly now, even in daylight. "And you killed our mother," he said, his young voice steady. "You killed Eliza Freeman when he tried to protect her." Wade faltered, momentarily startled by the boy's direct accusation. Impossible. You were infants. You couldn't remember. We remember everything. Vega joined her brother. The stone remembers. Enough. Wade raised his pistol toward Eliza. I won't be defeated by superstitious nonsense and 3 half-breed. The church doors burst open again. Senator Caldwell Wade swept in, flanked by more security. Unlike his cousin, the senator carried himself with sophisticated calculation, his expensive suit and manicured appearance marking him as a man of political power. Ezekiel. He admonished, this lacks discretion. I told you to handle the situation quietly. The Reverend's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. They have the documents, Caldwell. All of them. The senator's expression didn't change, but his eyes hardened. That is unfortunate. He turned to Eliza, assessing her with cold precision. Mrs. Freeman, I presume your reputation precedes you. The black midwife who defied frontier law to raise Comanche children. Quite the humanitarian tale. Senator Wade. Eliza acknowledged her mind racing for any potential escape. Here to witness your cousin's crimes firsthand. Crimes. The senator smiled thinly. Progress requires sacrifices. The copper beneath these hills will help build a nation. A few primitive tribes standing in the way of manifest destiny hardly constitutes a crime. The law would disagree, Eliza countered, clutching the documents tighter. The law, Senator Wade replied smoothly, is written by men like me. While they spoke, Rigel had been carefully scanning the church, his tactical mind seeking any advantage. He caught his father's eye, glancing meaningfully toward the high stained glass window behind the altar. Broken Shield gave an almost imperceptible nod. Your commission will be interested to know. Eliza continued deliberately, keeping the Wade's attention. That you fabricated Comanche hostilities to justify seizing mineral-rich land. My commission. The senator actually laughed. Mrs. Freeman, who do you think appointed them? Who do you think they report to this territory's future was decided months ago in Washington committee rooms. Today's negotiations are merely theater for the public. Outside, lightning split the sky, followed immediately by deafening thunder. The storm had positioned itself directly over the church rain, hammering the roof with unusual intensity. Sirius, who had remained silent during this exchange, suddenly reached for his sibling's hands. The turquoise necklace blazed with blue fire so bright it illuminated the entire church interior. What is this? Senator Wade demanded, stepping back involuntarily. The truth, Sirius replied simply. The blue light expanded outward from the necklace, filling the church with uncanny radiance. Within that light, spectral scenes began to form, vivid reconstructions of the massacres, showing Wade giving orders, soldiers firing on unarmed women and children, Eliza Freeman stepping between a pregnant Comanche woman and the Reverend's gun. Most damning of all, Senator Wade himself, standing on a hill overlooking one such massacre, consulting with mining engineers, even as bodies lay cooling on the ground below. Devil's work, Reverend Wade shouted, raising his pistol toward the triplets. Before he could fire, Broken Shield launched himself over the altar with preternatural speed, tackling the Reverend to the ground. The gun discharged harmlessly into the ceiling. The senator's security moved to intervene, but froze as the church doors crashed open once again. Captain Hollister stood there, bleeding from a fresh wound, but standing firm, backed by Widow Haynes and a dozen armed settlers. Nobody moves. Hollister commanded, his military authority momentarily paralyzing everyone in the room. The standoff balanced on a knife edge. Senator Wade's men outnumbered Hollister's group, but the spectral evidence continued swirling around them, a supernatural accusation none could easily dismiss. And this changes nothing. Senator Wade declared, recovering his composure. My men will cut you down where you stand. Whatever evidence you've gathered will be buried with you. Not all of us, came a new voice from the doorway. Colonel Richard Harrison, head of the Treaty Commission, stepped into the church, followed by several Army officers. His weathered face remained impassive as he surveyed the extraordinary scene, the glowing children, the spectral images, the armed confrontation. Colonel Senator Wade greeted him with forced cordiality. "You're early. The reception isn't until—" "I received an urgent message suggesting I might find something of interest here." Harrison interrupted, holding up a letter bearing Hollister's signature. "Something that might explain why every treaty negotiation in this territory has mysteriously failed." The blue light intensified around the triplets, the spectral scenes focusing now on specific documents, the very ones Senator Wade had signed, authorizing massacres disguised as military actions. Clever fabrications. The senator dismissed with a wave of his hand. "Surely you don't believe in such supernatural nonsense, Colonel." "What I believe," Harrison replied evenly, "is in evidence." He gestured to Eliza. "Mrs. Freeman, I understand you have documents to share with the Commission." Before Eliza could move, Senator Wade gave a subtle signal to his men. In the next instant, chaos erupted. Gunfire exploded across the church as Wade's security opened fire. Eliza threw herself over the triplets as bullets splintered the pews around them. Hollister and the settlers returned fire from the doorway, while Broken Shield struggled with Reverend Wade for control of his pistol. Through the mayhem, Senator Wade moved with surprising speed for a politician, seizing the documents from where Eliza had dropped them and heading for the side door. "The evidence," Rigel shouted, watching their proof of Wade's crimes disappearing. Lightning struck the church steeple with a deafening crack. The entire building shook plaster raining down as blue electrical currents seemed to course through the very walls. In that moment of confusion, Senator Wade reached the door, documents in hand. Hollister saw him escaping and made a desperate decision. Breaking from cover, he sprinted across the church bullets, cutting the air around him. He tackled the senator just as he opened the door. Both men tumbled outside into the raging storm. "You, Captain." Eliza cried, unable to see what had happened to him. The church battle continued, neither side able to gain advantage. Broken Shield had finally wrested the revolver from his cousin, but remained pinned down behind the altar with him. The triplets huddled beneath Eliza's protective embrace, the turquoise necklace still blazing with supernatural light. "The stone can help." Vega insisted, her young face determined despite the danger surrounding them. "How?" Eliza demanded, flinching, as a bullet embedded itself in the pew inches from her head. "Isaiah." Sirius answered cryptically. "He's been waiting to help. The stone connects them, him and our mother. Their spirits joined when both died, protecting the same lives." "What are you talking about?" Eliza asked, bewildered. "Trust us," Rigel urged. "Let us try." Before Eliza could protest further, the triplets joined hands around the glowing necklace. The blue light suddenly expanded with explosive force, momentarily blinding everyone in the church. When vision returned, a profound silence had fallen. In the center aisle stood two luminous figures, a Comanche woman in traditional dress, her pregnant belly evident, and beside her, impossibly Eliza Freeman in his Buffalo Soldier uniform. They weren't transparent like the earlier spectral images, but solid, seeming their expressions fierce and determined. Wade's men froze weapons, lowering involuntarily in the face of what could only be described as ghosts. Colonel Harrison and his officers stared in equal astonishment. "Isaiah," Eliza whispered, tears streaming down her face. The apparition turned toward her, his expression softening with recognition and love. But he didn't speak. Instead, both spirits moved toward the side door where Hollister and Senator Wade had disappeared. As if compelled by some invisible force, everyone followed Wade's men, Harrison's officers, the settlers, Eliza, and the children, even Reverend Wade, now disarmed and restrained by Broken Shield. Outside, the storm had intensified to unnatural proportions. Wind howled through the streets, and lightning struck repeatedly around the church perimeter. Through the driving rain, they could see Hollister and Senator Wade still struggling in the mud, fighting for possession of the documents that had scattered around them. The spectral figures of Isaiah and Strongwater stood over the combatants, their forms seeming to gather the storm's energy. As everyone watched in stunned silence, lightning struck again, not at the men, but at the scattered papers. For an instant, the documents glowed with the same blue radiance as the turquoise necklace. Then, impossibly, the words written on them rose from the pages like smoke, forming legible text in the air. Above names, dates, orders, signatures, all the evidence of the Wade's crimes displayed in letters of fire that the rain couldn't extinguish. "My God," Colonel Harrison breathed, staring at the damning evidence suspended in midair. Senator Wade, seeing his carefully constructed conspiracy exposed beyond denial, made a final desperate move. Drawing a hidden derringer from his boot, he aimed not at Hollister, but at the triplets. "If I fall," he snarled, "so do the last witnesses." Isaiah's spirit moved with impossible speed, placing himself between the gun and the children, just as the senator fired. The bullet passed harmlessly through the spectral form. But in that moment of intervention, Hollister lunged forward, driving his knife into the senator's shoulder. Wade screamed, the derringer falling from his grasp. "It's over." Hollister declared, his face grim with exhaustion and pain from his own wounds. "Colonel, I believe you have what you need for your report to Washington." Harrison stepped forward, seeming to age years in moments, as he absorbed the magnitude of the conspiracy he'd unwittingly been part of. "Captain Hollister, Mrs. Freeman, secure these men. As head of this treaty commission, I'm placing both Ezekiel and Caldwell Wade under military arrest, pending full investigation." As Harrison's officers moved to take custody of the Wades, Eliza rushed to Hollister's side. The captain's uniform was soaked with blood, not all of it the senator's. "You're hit," she said, examining a serious wound in his side. "Worth it," he gasped, struggling to remain conscious. "For Isaiah, for the children." The spectral figures of Isaiah and Strongwater still stood nearby, their forms beginning to fade as the storm gradually subsided. Their mission apparently complete, they turned toward Eliza and the triplets one last time. Though they didn't speak aloud, Eliza somehow heard Isaiah's voice in her mind. "You did what I couldn't. You saved them. You built something beautiful from tragedy. Don't go," she pleaded, reaching toward him, even as his form grew more transparent. "Not going," came his silent reply. "Just changing form. We'll always be watching over you all through the stone." As the spirits faded completely, the turquoise necklace gave one final pulse of brilliant blue light before returning to its natural state. The triplets collapsed in exhaustion, caught by Broken Shield's strong arms before they could hit the ground. The rain gentled to a soft patter, and sunlight broke through the clouds, illuminating a town forever changed by what had just occurred. 3 months later, Eliza stood on the porch of a new cabin, watching the triplets help Broken Shield construct a traditional Comanche shelter nearby. The valley had transformed since that fateful confrontation at the church. Senator Wade awaited trial in Austin, his political career destroyed by Colonel Harrison's comprehensive report to Washington. Reverend Wade had escaped earthly justice by hanging himself in his cell, though some whispered that blue light had been seen beneath his door the night he died. Most surprisingly, the federal government had designated the valley an experimental territory, where Comanche and settlers could coexist under joint governance, partly in response to the national attention Harrison's report had generated, and partly due to the colonel's passionate advocacy after witnessing events that had shaken his understanding of the world. Widow Haynes and several other settler families had moved closer to Eliza's new homestead, forming a small community alongside the Comanche band Broken Shield once led. The arrangement remained fragile, tensions flaring occasionally, but held together by mutual need and the remarkable influence of the triplets. Now 10 years old, Rigel, Sirius, and Vega had become a bridge between worlds. They spoke both languages, fluently studied frontier medicine with Eliza and Comanche traditions with their father. Their unusual abilities, sensing danger, finding water, healing with touch, knowing things they couldn't possibly know, had initially frightened some settlers. But when Vega predicted the flash flood that would have destroyed the new settlement, and the children guided everyone to safety, fear had given way to cautious respect. Captain Hollister, now Major Hollister, had survived his wounds to become the territory's official military liaison. As he rode up to the porch, Eliza noted how the haunted look that once shadowed his eyes had been replaced by purpose. Colonel Harrison's report was formally accepted in Washington. He announced dismounting. The copper mining permits have been permanently revoked and the land rights transferred to Joint Comanche Settler Trust. Will it last? Eliza asked the practical question that never left her thoughts. Hollister removed his hat, looking across the valley where children of both cultures played together. Washington's sending an inspector next month. Some still want the copper mined. But after what happened, what people saw, he shook his head in wonderment. Let's just say even hardened politicians think twice about challenging what many now call the miracle at Copper Creek. It wasn't a miracle, Rigel stated matter-of-factly, joining them on the porch. It was science we don't understand yet. Energy patterns stored in crystalline structures activated by emotional resonance. Whatever it was, Sirius added, coming up behind his brother, it connected souls across the divide between life and death. That feels like a miracle to me. His empathic nature had deepened since the confrontation, his healing abilities now extending beyond physical ailments to emotional wounds. Both perspectives have validity. Vega concluded, diplomatically completing their trio. Of the three, she had emerged as the natural leader, her decisiveness tempered by wisdom beyond her years. What matters is what we build with the opportunity we've been given. The turquoise necklace, now restored to its complete form, hung inside above the fireplace in their new home. It rarely glowed now, except during moments of particular importance or danger. But all of them, even skeptical Hollister, had come to accept that something of Isaiah and Strongwater remained connected to them, through the stone guardians watching from beyond the veil. That evening, as twilight painted the valley in purple and gold, the mixed community gathered around a central fire. Comanche tradition merging with frontier social custom. Children from both cultures played together, while adults shared food and increasingly comfortable conversation. Eliza sat between Broken Shield and Widow Haynes, watching the triplets demonstrate a Comanche dance to fascinated settler children. "They're special," the widow murmured, touched by the Almighty for a purpose. The old ones spoke of star children. Broken Shield added, "Three born as one, walking between worlds in times of great change." Eliza smiled, remembering the names she'd given them, Rigel, Sirius, Vega. Star names chosen before she understood their significance. Whatever they are, they're ours to protect, all of ours. Later, as the gathering dispersed and stars filled the Texas sky, Eliza found the triplets sitting on a ridge overlooking the valley, their identical profiles silhouetted against the moon. "I saw him again," Sirius said without turning. "Isaiah, he was standing beside our mother, both smiling." "The copper beneath us carries their memories," Rigel explained. "Sometimes when conditions are right, we can access those memory patterns. They're proud of what we're building here," Vega added with quiet certainty. "But they also showed me something else, something coming." Eliza tensed. "Danger, challenge," Vega corrected. "There's another stone, like ours but different, far to the west, and others like us who need help finding their path." The inspector from Washington. Rigel continued his analytical mind, already calculating. "He's not just coming to evaluate our settlement. He's bringing something with him, a turquoise piece from Arizona territory, found during a survey expedition. It's calling to our stone. Sirius finished. Like they're parts of something larger, something that was broken long ago. Eliza looked down at the valley, at their fledgling community, taking shape below, at the land healing from drought and conflict, and felt a certainty beyond rational explanation. Whatever forces had brought them all together, whatever destiny the triplets were meant to fulfill, reached far beyond this single valley. A month later, as predicted, the government inspector arrived. But unlike the harsh bureaucrat they'd expected, Colonel Richard Harrison himself stepped from the train accompanied by a younger man who wore the insignia of the Geological Survey, Mrs. Freeman. Harrison greeted her warmly. "I hope you don't mind I came personally. After what I witnessed, well, some things shouldn't be delegated." That evening, after formal inspections and meetings with community leaders, Harrison revealed the true purpose behind his visit. From a leather pouch, he produced a turquoise stone remarkably similar to their own, yet with distinct patterns and coloration. "Found near an abandoned Navajo settlement," he explained. The survey team reported unusual phenomena surrounding it. Lights at night, dreams shared by everyone in camp. He hesitated before adding, "and 3 children orphaned who seemed drawn to it. Children with abilities." The triplets, who had been unusually quiet throughout the meeting, suddenly focused intently on the stone. As Harrison placed it on the table, their necklace began to glow in response. The familiar blue light reaching out to caress the new stone like tendrils of living energy. "They're speaking to each other," Vega whispered, entranced. "Parts of a whole," Rigel agreed. "Separated long ago?" There are more," Sirius added. "Many more, scattered across the territories." Harrison cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the metaphysical implications, but unable to deny what he was witnessing. "Washington doesn't know what to make of these phenomena. But after what happened here, I convinced them that you, all of you, might be the right people to investigate. You want us to go to Arizona?" Eliza stated, understanding dawning. "To find these children. To help establish another community like this one." Harrison confirmed. "A place where different peoples can coexist, protected by..." He gestured vaguely at the glowing stones. "Whatever power watches over this valley." Broken Shield, who had remained silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke. "Our ancestors believed the people were guided by star messengers in times of great change. Perhaps that time has come again." Eliza looked at the triplets, no longer the starving infants she'd rescued, but young people standing at the threshold of an extraordinary destiny. They returned her gaze with identical expressions of certainty and purpose. "We'll go," she decided. "Not just for these other children, but for what they represent. A chance to heal wounds older and deeper than any of us fully understand." As they prepared for the journey west, the turquoise necklace glowed with steady blue light, as if approving their decision. Outside, the stars seemed especially bright, Rigel, Sirius, and Vega, forming a perfect triangle in the vastness of the Texas sky. The Black Widow, who had rescued starving Comanche triplets, had forever changed their warrior father's life. But the true transformation was only beginning. What had started as one woman's act of courage in a blood-soaked ravine was expanding into something that might eventually heal the fractured heart of a nation torn by hatred and greed. Together, they would follow the calling of the stones, seeking others like themselves, bridges between worlds, healers of ancient wounds, guardians of a future where different peoples might finally learn to walk the same path in peace.